from the Crypt.
What is up, freaks? Welcome back to Tales from the Crypt. It's your boy Marty Bent. We're back in the studio on Friday this time. We had a little Saturday coffee session last week with Crypto De Medici. I'm very excited for this week's guest, and we've got alcohol back in the studio. Alcohol of choice today is whiskey. Specifically, what are we drinking here? Jefferson's. Very small batch blend of straight bourbon whiskey. Highly recommended. Sipped on it for a little bit already. Very good whiskey. And Jefferson, if you want to sponsor the pod, let me know. We're taking sponsorships. So before we dive into everything, I'd like to introduce everybody to Chiefy Nduom. Chiefy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Very happy to be here.
Thank you for coming. I'm excited to have you on. You've become a bit of a Bitcoin celebrity over the last 2 months.
No. I'm a charlatan and a shill.
Oh, we all are. We all are. For those of you that don't know, Chiefy blew up towards the end of last year, towards the last day of last year, after he posted an article on LinkedIn, 13 African countries should buy Bitcoin right now. So we were talking a little bit before we hopped in the studio here, and you were saying your Twitter stardom was completely unexpected. You were trying to keep this bottled to your Ghanaian friends.
Yeah, when I wrote the article, I was just concerned because I was watching, macroeconomic news, and I saw too many predictions of the dollar fall in 2018 up to as high as 10%. And so I was thinking about that, and I've been following Bitcoin for other reasons for a very long time. From 2013, I've been following it. And so when I looked at the options, I said, okay, look, something, if the dollar is going to fall and you're a developing country that owns or holds a lot of dollars for import cover purposes, right? You need to think about hedging. So if you look at, people, a lot of the nuance in the article sort of disappeared because I said that some of them shouldn't probably invest if they don't have the technical capacity, but some of them who do, right, should go into it, study, make a decision to invest or not. But if you don't even do that, you have to do something. So even if you're not looking at Bitcoin, you should be hedging away from the US dollar. You should have some strategy, maybe move to a basket of currencies, You need to have a strategy, and that was I wrote it really to raise an awareness in Ghana, and I did press only in Ghana, for that reason because the frenzy that is here in the U.S. does not really exist in Ghana. There's a lot of interest online, however, you don't really have sort of like the daily news. Like now, when you listen to Bloomberg, they're like the Dow is up by however many points and Bitcoin is down, and so it's now become a part of the investment landscape, right? And it hasn't really reached that level in Ghana in particular. So I was like, okay, people need to pay attention. Let me put this out here. And people have made some comments like, okay, I said 10% in the LinkedIn post and 1% when I went to the press in Ghana, and the reason is because the original article I thought was only really going to be read by the few people I have on LinkedIn, some friends, my family, and I knew the news story in Ghana would get a little bit of traction, but it was really just it was very pointed at a very specific audience, which is, people who work at the central bank, people who work in finance, to think through the concept and hoping that somebody would look at it and say, oh, fine, we think Bitcoin is a joke, but maybe we should buy some Swiss francs, maybe we should buy some pounds, and we should, hedge your bets.
Yes. Yeah. So a few weeks ago, I'm trying to think how many episodes ago. I think it's 3 or 4 episodes ago now. We actually have somebody who works here, Za. He's from Zimbabwe, and he was telling us Zimbabwe's history and sort of how they moved to a multi-currency state to an extent, and how Bitcoin may be able to help there. And I thought your initiative in Ghana is very similar, but they're totally different situations between Ghana and Zimbabwe.
Well, yeah, Zimbabwe, has had a lot of problems and has been seen by a lot of people as like an anomaly in the international space. But the reality is that there are many countries who either peg their currency to the dollar, formally or informally, or they're what they call dollarized economies. So the price that you see in the local currency is really reflecting the dollar price. And we operate in a number of countries, and Ghana is one of them. So there were a number of initiatives by the central bank a few years prior to try and, for example, they put out notices saying you're not allowed to price goods in dollars anymore, which you would find. And so you would go to buy a car, and the price is the price in dollars, and you translate it into the local currency, which is the Ghana cedi, at the point of purchase, right? And the reason why is from a technical perspective, you don't run your economy on a unit that you don't print, right? Because you can run into problems like what happened to Greece and other things, right?
Yep.
But, I think the reality is that there is a status quo in the global macroeconomic environment where the U.S. dollar is important, and for good reason, right? I've been talking a lot, and, some of my thoughts about international finance, when I think about it, I'm not I'm a lawyer by trade. I'm not really a trader or like a real investor aside from what I do for my family. So a lot of when I look at it, I try and think about bigger picture issues, right? So when I think about currencies, I think about, betting on a particular country and its economy, right? And I do think that given that the United States has the largest military in the world and has, this hotbed of innovation and has a very good legal structure, there's a reason why the dollar is used as, really the primary unit of international commerce, right? And I've been recently talking about Max Weber and his theories and the concept of a monopoly of legitimate violence, right? And he says, that's really what the state is, right? And so when I think, if you define the state as the thing that primarily has a monopoly of legitimate violence, then it follows that the unit of value issued by that state would be backed by that monopoly of violence. So when people say currencies can't be valued, or they use currency trading value strategies, I think about, okay, when everything goes wrong, right?
What are the men with guns going to do?
Exactamundo. So from that standpoint, right, you want to have some dollars, but then now, you've even got American investors with huge amounts of money saying you're going to look stupid if you're sitting in cash. Yeah. So, and before, like a few years prior, or even like, let's say in the 70s and things, if you make a comment that, you think that you need to hedge away from the dollar, people would call you a communist or something, right? And now the investors in America are saying, hey, you need to look at other asset classes than just holding cash. Yeah. So it's a completely new world that we're operating in now.
And this week in particular, we had Mario Draghi throwing some punches across the table, coming at Trump's policy, trying to talk down, or Draghi was trying to talk it up. Trump was trying to talk it down, and you had Mnuchin, I don't even know how to pronounce his name. Mnuchin come in and talk it back today. It's funny how words can affect these currency crosses.
Yeah, and I think that comes down to the central thing that I think gets people who are thinking people excited about Bitcoin and excited about macro thinking, is because it forces you to think creatively about the concept of value. And that the reason why the words move the value is because value exists in human consciousness, right? So, if an alien shows up and says, I want a drink of water, and they say, okay, you have to give me this piece of paper, right? And then they're going to be like, why? Why do I have to give you this US dollar, right? And so, they might you have to explain it to them. It's something that we've made up, right? And that has not existed for time immemorial, right? So once you start to think creatively about it, right, then the world of possibility opens up.
Yeah, and that's sort of one of the themes that we touch on a lot here at Tales from the Crypt is we were just born into the situation. You start running when you're born. It's like a lot of people never take the step back to sort of evaluate where we are in the context of history, right? Specifically in a monetary history, and we do live in a time of monetary experiment with fiat currencies. A very, very fickle world, I would say, where you have central banks around the world coordinating dovish monetary policy. And this is something we haven't experienced up until this point, and people don't realize it. They're born, especially here in America, we're born. You're obviously introduced to U.S. dollars. You use it as commerce throughout your life, and you're like, it works. This could never not work for most people. They're sort of stuck in that mindset of never even questioning what it is and what money is at its core. So I think definitely bringing up the psychological aspect and what it is really it's a human construction in the mind.
It's a social construction. I spent a lot of time in college studying sociology, so I would look at how concepts people take for granted, such as race or other things, are social contracts. So, and when you start with that approach and you understand that humanity is, moldable, flexible, and things can be created and changed, then you apply that to value. And even when you look at global macroeconomic policy, and if you read the post, a lot of the things that I put in there were like opinions that were unrelated to the argument that I just have, that I just for some reason felt like writing about, right? And, when I look at it, another reason why I do like Bitcoin as a global store of value that's permissionless is that point you made. Okay, we get born here in America and we use these dollars, right? And people hold on to their ancestors' history as if they were responsible for it. However, the reality is that where you are from and what your outlook is in life is an accident of birth, right? It's just randomness. You don't see your parents out there in the ether and say, okay, I want to come and be your baby. You just happen to occur somewhere, and then that happens, right? And so I like the concept of something that people can participate in that is not dependent upon where they're born or what circumstance they're in or whatever. It's just an open network that if you have the resources to participate in, you can participate in, and there's no permission required. So it's a very interesting way to look at a value system where, common modern-day currencies are linked to the state, the monopoly of violence, and borders. And, so this is novel and innovative in that, there's none of that there.
Yeah, having a peer-to-peer borderless digital currency is something that people can't grasp right now. That's what the people don't understand it in earnest, and particularly the innovation of censorship resistance. But I've been arguing that Bitcoin is just like another, not an iteration, but like an addition to the internet. Like, look at what the internet's done with the exchange of information.
Yep.
And now we're just iterating on that and adding a value exchange system on top of that. And just the internet alone, like what it has allowed people to build in the last 20, 30 years has been incredible. And and that's one thing we're still working on as a plan, is getting everybody access to the internet. But those that do have access to the internet they have opportunities that have not that humans for the first 12,000 years did not have.
Right. This is a very new phenomenon, and it's difficult to get into it because it's still very early. And many of the seminal texts and many of the even ways to access Bitcoin are not very user-friendly.
No.
And there's still a whole lot of scamming and fraud in the space.
Especially today, we saw that with the Japanese exchange. I forget what it's called, but they took a bunch of NEM.
Yep.
Didn't even know that was a current cryptocurrency till today. And
me neither. And a whole lot of it got stolen. And that fits directly into even like the argument that I've been making about it, right? Is that I would like to see developing countries participate, but I would not like them to participate in the way that you find now, where the open nature does allow people to run scams, and where, it's a commodity, right? Because it's a commodity. So coordinated action and collusion in markets that are unregulated is something that can't be stopped.
No.
So I would not want people who are having trouble collecting value, they're not rich, I would not want them to be involved in a market with sharks with no circuit breakers, no regulators, no nothing. So when I made the argument, the reason why I chose the central banks to look at it, and the reason why I didn't say every African person or every person in a developing country should buy Bitcoin right now, is because I felt that they already know and work to prevent fraud, and of all kinds. They already have economists and financial specialists and technology specialists who help run the banking system. So they should be able to evaluate what this is and then make a reasoned decision to purchase. And of course, they would hodl. They wouldn't just go they wouldn't be sitting there day trading the Bitcoin, right?
No.
They would buy it, they'd hold it, and of course they'd hedge their price position. And another point that I haven't sort of gone into in deep detail is that within the allocation that I'm talking about, I'm not just saying go and buy Bitcoin.
No.
I'm saying that within, like, let's say, so in Ghana's case, 1% of the reserves would be $70 million, right? And of that 70 million, you would say, okay, 7 million goes to maybe purchase of Bitcoin on exchanges, global exchanges, and you put it in cold storage. And you have, human-based multi-sig approaches to make sure that you audit it and you check where it is. Then you would dedicate money to trading, right? And trading purposely just to get more Bitcoins, right? And then you would have hedging and management just like you would with any other currencies. You'd invest another 7 in, investing in technology. So bringing in specialists to train people to understand the technology and look at secondary and tertiary levels on top of Bitcoin. So you can actually think through, hey, how can we use this to, for example, make mobile money more transparent and also easier to track in our local economy. You can, one of the things that popped into my head today, I was talking to somebody and I was thinking that, there's a use case for even governments and agencies to have a cache of a tool like Bitcoin for emergencies, right? What happens when you need to make an emergency payment and the banks are closed, right? Yeah. And you need to get something in today, right? There's an emergency and you need to bring people in or you need to bring supplies in. Well, if you have your cache of Bitcoin, you can
do that
anytime, anywhere, right? And so you'd invest in the ecosystem. You would invest in mining, right? You'd invest in all parts of the ecosystem, running nodes, making sure that your internet capability is good enough to be and interact and be a part of the network.
Stay up with the latency and stuff like that.
Exactly. And so you would create and all of those actions create value. They teach people new things. They, diversify what you're doing with your value as a central bank. And now today, actually also this morning, I've been thinking more so about the concept of a central bank as something new, like rethinking what these things are.
Yeah, you were tweeting about it today, the Swiss National Bank.
Yes. I for some reason this morning that popped in, it just, I was just thinking about it, and then I was thinking about how they have managed, right? Because I had tweeted about that, the fact that they made money, right? They made $55 billion basically acting like a hedge fund, right?
Yeah.
Printing money and then buying shares of Apple and other things, right? But I didn't make the connection that the only bank that I've seen that is able to purchase, where you can buy Bitcoin from the bank, is in Switzerland, I think, that I've seen so far. And what that means is that the central bank there gave them permission to do so. So in my mind, the connection was, they must have, if in order to give someone permission, you must think there's a future in this business, right? So they're going long on the new future. And then, I didn't put in a Twitter post, and I probably shouldn't go and put my science fiction, but like in my mind,
no,
right?
we get cosmic here.
Okay, we get cosmic. Okay, I'll go
cosmic
as
you want.
Yeah, and so, I'll put all the disclaimers. If there are any regulators listening, I'm drunk. I'm here drinking whiskey. So, and, you cannot hold me to. But basically, the concept is, I was thinking, wow, Switzerland is the neutral state, right? They're neutral. The U.S. and Japan were big into quantitative easing, right? And
Japan for like almost 30 years now, right?
Right.
It's been like 25, 30 years.
Yeah, the Bank of Japan basically owns their stock market, right? And then you have recently, Trace Mayer wrote a article, or I had an interview on Zero Hedge where he's talking about Bitcoin as a geopolitical weapon, right? Which is scary concept, right? And
that's one thing people don't realize, is that like if Bitcoin becomes successful, it means a lot of heavy shit is going to happen around the world. Like
it could, because then the dots I was thinking through were like, whoa, what if it is the case, right, that this is an emerging geopolitical issue, and that the concept that China is starting to, quote unquote, crack down by not allowing miners to claim subsidies that apply to data centers in order to get cheaper electricity and other tax breaks, which is causing them to relocate. What if that is a reaction to the inability of the miners to control the network, which they were unable to do in terms of upgrades to the protocol, right?
Yeah, over the summer with the whole SegWit 2x New York agreement and Bcash too.
So what if the concept was, well, you can't control this thing, so now we're not going to subsidize it anymore. And now the the miners are moving to more Western countries, and you have Switzerland playing the neutral party and basically just going full out, buying tech stocks, buying Bitcoins, right? And just waiting for the carnage to happen. Like basically saying, hey guys, let's get ready for the nuclear winter. Let's buy a lot of Bitcoin, let's buy a lot of technology stocks, and then the data wars will start. But, the concept is it's, when you think through, and that's just me I'm running scenarios, right? I'm just trying to think what is happening in the world right now, because it's really weird if you really do think about the amount of energy that's being put, the amount of money that's going into the space, the fact that, when I first read about Bitcoin and the game theory of Bitcoin, this is really in 2013.
Mm-hmm.
I read about it and I said, fine, there is international monetary game theory already going on. So there are political and economic reasons behind.
Mario Draghi's comments this week is part of that game theory.
Right. They're all positioning themselves. How strong is my currency? How weak is my currency? How do I attract investment? How do I incentivize imports? And all of that is already going on. So we already have a game theory sort of based economic system, global economic system. But I thought that concept encapsulated in software was too fragile for me as a person who invests and who works with financial institutions. I thought that, fine, you can say that it's uneconomical for a 51% attack or anything else to occur, right? But it's not improbable, okay? So I thought, hey, I need to wait and see what happens with this thing, right? I felt that it was, in some ways you could say it's safer because you can see the attacks occurring on the network, right? And you can track them, right?
Like we're seeing the spam attack that the network's been undergoing just get completely wiped out. I think the mempoolsum is cleared out.
So yeah, right. So basically, it's in some ways it's safer when you do things out in the open instead of behind closed doors, right? So. And then and by waiting, a lot of things have been shaken out of the ecosystem. The Mt. Gox thing and the, Silk Road and all these other things got pretty much shaken out. And I was further interested when I said that, okay, one of the things I always think very critically about is every time somebody gets up and says the price is going to go to zero, it could take 100 years or whatever, but it's going to go to zero. I always find it interesting because they never list like the 3 or 4 key factors that will bring it to zero. I'm basically saying, so you're relying on intuition. Give me some arguments because I would like to hear them.
I think there's only one argument. It would have to be a foul swoop coordination between all the governments in the world to knock on node operators' doors and destroy them, which is highly improbable.
Right, and also it'd be contrary to, it would be contrary to the concept of a free Western democracy. You cannot stop innovation. You cannot stop information from flowing. You can't appropriate property that illegally. So, go ahead.
As a lawyer, let me ask you about this: the whole argument that Bitcoin is free speech, because at the end of the day, it's just written code that's run on hardware. So at the end of the day, Bitcoin is code.
Ding, ding, ding. And that's one of the reasons why I also thought heavily about it and talked to my family and friends about it, is because I did look and think through that. I thought through that argument, and I was like, okay, can Bitcoin be banned? And I was like, that would be unconstitutional. So, I don't really see an argument in a country with this structure that would allow a government to quote unquote ban. And if you try and regulate it out of existence, you also have another component that people don't understand. Regulation, that is not just prohibition, requires a lot of investment. You have to hire lawyers, accountants, investigators, and other things. And for a state to make that decision, that decision by default. So people saying by default that you have to regulate it heavily is not actually a bearish indicator. That's an indicator that the thing is important.
Yeah, right. Joseph Stiglitz fighting in Davos this week, fighting for heavy regulation. Right,
but heavy regulation will make it grow faster. That's what people don't realize. Because once it's regulated, right? Once it's heavily regulated, we're still very early in Bitcoin, right? And so the reality is that a lot of the people who were originally attracted to it, in some cases, were attracted to it for radical ideas, right? Which is fine. It's an open network, right?
I would argue, I was,
right.
To an extent.
Right.
Not radical in the sense of Radical in the sense that, and I come from an economics background. I study economics in college and work for a managed futures fund. And I came from a radical, like, we need to fix our money sort of standpoint, like sound money. That's the perspective I'm coming from.
That's not that radical. There are people in the Fed who are thinking that.
Yeah.
Probably. There probably are. I mean, I saw on the 10th, when I saw this explainer article about Bitcoin from the St. Louis Fed. Sorry, there's an explainer article from the St. Louis Fed on the 10th, January 10th it came out. And when I read that paper, I was thinking, what is the purpose of this paper? Why would someone sitting at a branch of, the central bank write an explainer paper on Bitcoin that has some, very, it has caveats, but with positive language, basically saying that it could be seen as a store of value like digital gold, right? It could be. So it's likely that whoever approved that paper to be written, I don't know if there's an approval process. I don't know if the people there can just write whatever they want.
I doubt that.
Right. But so somebody had to look at this and say, okay, you can write about Bitcoin, right? That means that there are likely people who sympathize with this technology in that branch of the government, just in terms of running through probabilities and why the paper would even exist, right? Because if they all thought it was completely just a ridiculous thing, why would you bother spending time and resources writing a paper about it?
I think the public has forced their hand with the mania of the last year. I think they feel they're supposed to be the monetary authority. They're supposed to have all the answers, and maybe they felt a little pressure, like, hey, if we're supposed to be running the money, maybe we should understand this new money that everybody's talking about.
That's a good point. However, if they were just pressured and just didn't like it, the paper would just say, we're writing about Bitcoin and we think it's stupid. They didn't do that.
No.
They wrote a very well-reasoned article that explained value in very good ways and that explained the concept in very good. And I'm finding that technical people who are not familiar with monetary policy, when they read that paper, they start to understand what it is, what the risks are, and what the potential is. And the act of producing something like that is very good for the asset class in the sense that now you have a very sort of grown-up perspective on what it is, and the grown-up perspective did not conclude that it's magical internet money.
No. And that's one thing that I love about this magical internet money is that it's forcing people to think hard about monetary policy. And again, like we said in the beginning of the episode, what is money at its core?
Yep.
And it's incredible to be alive during this time when this, I would call it a changing of the guard to an extent.
I think that people's minds are being open, and when I think deeply about it, I read Ray Dalio's Principles, his book, which is a very good book that is kind of like it's a self-help book written by a guy with a lot of money, right? And you read it, and it goes over his thinking, and it goes over how he runs things. But there's a passage where he says that nature optimizes for the whole, right? It's not really concerned about you. And when I think about this kind of network and the thinking behind it and the technology behind it, I think that paying more attention to it is good for humanity because we're learning how to manipulate and control data in new and exciting ways. And the craze in terms of fast money, like, oh my God, the price is going up, is now forcing people to think about computers as opposed to frivolous things. So I think that's good for humanity.
Yeah, and like going back to what you were talking earlier, when you were describing how the Ghana central bank should diversify between buying Bitcoin directly and then investing in mining and node operators and internet infrastructure. That's what I love about Bitcoin so much is the network. The network's a self-fulfilling prophecy to an extent. I love your advice to not just buy Bitcoin directly. Invest in the infrastructure around the network, and you will bring value to the underlying token.
Yeah.
And
there's a huge problem going on right now in this space. Huge. And it is blockchain. Right?
Blockchain, not Bitcoin. Bitcoin's MySpace. You didn't hear?
Yeah, it is. It is. It feels a lot like MySpace. No, I mean, like, blockchain and ICOs and tokens, and I think that there's a whole ton of promise, but I think the public doesn't understand that this is venture capital.
Exactly. Well, that's what I've touched on before is like we're trying to apply old world sort of structures to this new technology, and I think people are just going to get blown the fuck out because their concept of what this technology is just they're trying to equivalate it to what we're used to, and it's just not going to work.
No, it doesn't work at all. So, for example, someone who advises people on investing in what I call digital assets on Twitter used the analogy that forks of the Bitcoin code and ledger are stock splits.
No.
And they're not stock splits. That is a very dangerous idea.
Yeah.
I think that allows Bitcoin whales to create financial weapons of mass destruction by forking, the code and the ledger and saying, here's Bitcoin idiot, buy it. And, and I've got tons of it. I got so much of Bitcoin stupid, and I want the ETF to value it. So now, something I thought of in my bedroom, is valued at $1 billion, and I can, make 300 million by encouraging people to buy my products with it.
And all you have to do is copy paste and change a couple parameters, and it's a living.
And that is actually a beautiful part of this ecosystem. However, once you copy the code, right, and copy the ledger and run it on a separate set of equipment, it is no longer Bitcoin. It's something else.
Yeah, I mean, that should have become apparent after the Bitcoin Cash, or when Bitcoin Cash forked off of the network. That's what people need to understand is when you fork, you're forking off the network. You're not like a new Bitcoin version that people need to upgrade to. You're running a completely different protocol.
And this is a very important point that I saw. And there was a letter issued by the SEC, I believe, where they were commenting on some of the ETF applications. And they asked questions, which at first I thought, why are these questions here? But then I realized that I think they have run through what we just described and are contemplating prohibiting the valuation of forks in Bitcoin ETFs, because they ask questions about, how are you going to value these, and what is the implication of market manipulation by quote unquote Bitcoin whales?
That's like, I think I might be in the minority in this view where I don't think crypto hedge funds are smart at all. Like I think the risk that you take on by holding all the assets in a central pool is stupid. I think it's totally anathema to what Bitcoin was created for, which is holding your own wealth. And then again, like we're talking about now with the forks, like we were finding this out with Coinbase, like, and they're not even a hedge fund. They're just a service where people are buying Bitcoin. It's a whole clusterfuck. Like people, if they wanted to, could go to Coinbase and say, hey, I want my Bitcoin Gold. I want my Bitcoin Platinum. Like I'm holding it on your exchange. You gave everybody their Bitcoin Cash. Why aren't I getting these other forks? And it creates a whole clusterfuck for everybody. And that's something that you have people running out of the gate. So I've been talking about this a lot with Lewis, who's my boss here. He helped me start this podcast and really encouraged me to like get into this. Like these crypto hedge funds, like, and they're like it's old money trying to get on a new hype phase and trying to make a quick buck, but they don't realize like the logistical shit show they can run into with the nature of these protocols.
I think that if you're structuring an entity like this, first off, every digital asset should probably be ring-fenced in its own LLC. I don't think you should pool them together. And because, for a number of reasons, you don't want risks to spread. Similarly, I would think that you should you have to have a very clear policy on what you're investing in. And I think the reason why I came up with that article is because I do believe in the Gold 2.0, Disrupting Gold thesis. There are a number of investors who are promoting this concept, but I've looked at it and I've read some writing. There's a gentleman named Vincent Lanley. He is the World Bank. He writes at Cointelegraph, and other people who have written pretty extensively about, that trajectory of this emerging as an asset class with the market caps and so on and so forth. I think that's a very compelling story for value. However, if you have an immutable ledger, right, the value is that immutable ledger. And the value is the consensus protocol within that walled garden. And then, so as I said, once you move out of that walled garden, you cannot relate value to that because the value is that walled garden and the immutable ledger, right? You know that your balance is there forever. And so I think that investors who want to take advantage of these sort of things where basically somebody just shows up and says that, hey, you were a part of this ledger, so now you can be a part of my software, right? They're basically, it's like the technological equivalent of a drug dealer giving someone a free baggie of crack.
Yeah.
Right?
Hey, here's some free money.
There you go. Have some fun, right? Yeah. And enjoy it. But it's a trap. So so when I look at it, and I know a lot of people really don't like there's these are some of the most I guess people don't like this argument. A lot of people in the space, when I say things like this, I can tell they're angry. They're angry. I've gotten some angry comments.
A lot of emotions in this space.
Yes, angry comments. I'm just a guy talking about Bitcoin, so don't be angry.
We're all just dudes talking here.
Yeah, exactly. I'm nobody. I'm
and a few women actually. There's women in blockchain,
right,
believe it or not.
Yes,
Bitcoin.
but it's not that serious, and it's just. But I do think serious thought needs to go into how can you make these things available for the ordinary person to purchase them within their 401k or whatever retirement portfolio, and you have to be responsible about that. And you have to make tough decisions, and one of those decisions to me would result in the drop in price of a lot of Bitcoin forks because the SEC would say, okay, we're approving the ETF, but no forks. Right, and the the thing that I said is just once you legitimize them, it's the Pandoras Box. How do you decide which one to include, which one not to include, and what are the market effects of that? And furthermore, as another analogy, you can just say it's alchemy, right? If it's digital gold, you can't just create more of it out of nowhere. No. You need to be able, you can't just get a little bit of, get nodes and miners and just say, hey, we've got this new thing. No, you have to, stick with that. The gold in Bitcoin is the massive network that now exists with the massive amount of computing power and participation, and you don't relate it to vapor.
And and the mental power that goes in. And that's one conversation I had last week with my guest, is we got into what people need to realize at the end of the day, this is code. It can be buggy. Like you want to be putting your value in code that's most likely not to be buggy. And Bitcoin, up to this point in time, has proven to be the most secure blockchain.
Right. And I think that the fact that it's open source, which allows anybody to go and just comb through it and try and discover something, aids in its security. And so, right, exactly. By definition, the moment you decide to fork it and put another team on it, it's by definition an inferior thing with less attention, less scrutiny, less history. And that is, I think, like the 800-pound gorilla in the blockchain space, which is that many of the new blockchains are very new. And what happened to Bitcoin, in its early years? What's the probability that you, with your new blockchain technology, won't experience the things that happened to Bitcoin?
Well, I would argue there's even more scrutiny on these new blockchains. Bitcoin has that first mover advantage where it didn't have as many eyes on it in the first few years, where it was lucky. It was able to solve and patch bugs that would have otherwise been fatal when there were fewer eyes on it. So now when these blockchains are launching and you have billions of eyes on it now.
But remember, most people don't even, with ICOs, most people don't even read the white paper, right?
No.
Right, and let alone have the skills to go through.
But you know who is reading that? Somebody like the DAO hacker or
exactly.
the hackers.
Exactly. I heard about a company. There's a number of companies that now do audits for ICOs and other things, and they're finding lots and lots of errors, lots and lots of problems. You know why? Because this week Barstool Sports, some company in LA. Pitched our investors that Barstool should have an ICO and should have a token. Nice.
This media company should have a token.
Can I buy some of it? What's the price?
No,
and how much money am I going to make?
I told them not to be stupid. I told the Sherman Group, the people that made this office and this studio possible, I was like, do not engage with these people. Yeah. Barstool does not need an ICO. Yeah. And then I went to the website of this group that was pitching them, and they were taking this meeting. I was like, have you seen their website? It's basically like a WordPress, the shitty CSS, everything was fucked up. I was like, it wasn't professional at all. I was like, that's the nature of the space right now, especially ICOs specifically. It's just a bunch of people hopping on the hype train. Hey, we'll structure your ICO. We'll make sure we'll teach you how to do an ERC20 spin up, and start your own network of value.
Which you can learn for free by going to the Ethereum website. so don't hire a consultant. Just go to the website and learn how to do it. But the thing is I think it's a very interesting space, and you never want to discourage innovation. You never want to discourage entrepreneurs. But I think that everybody, should just assume that 99% of what's out there won't work.
Yeah.
And so you got to do a lot of work to see what could possibly work, and what and even for the things that will work, many of them will probably take more time than people think they will take. And like Vitalik Buterin himself says that a lot. He's like, things have been taking longer than I think that they would. That's one of the things he learned from going through the process. So when I think about the blockchain space, and a lot of people have said this, for it to become a real space, first, the simple blockchain with the simple theory, right? Sound money, that's it. Very simple, application, permissionless store of value and transmission of value.
Slow and dumb.
That needs to succeed and become and grow to act as, the cornerstone of a very exciting industry.
The fulcrum from which everything can sort of,
Yes.
I totally agree. And that's one thing I touch on a lot in the newsletter I write and this podcast is the hubris that you see out there, that people who are discovering this and think they've figured it all out and think they've discovered how it's going to be applied throughout history or going to be applied to our society. It blows my mind to think that less than a decade in, we're gonna have this figured out and exactly how it's gonna work.
It's very funny. Like when I posted one of my actual first posts on LinkedIn about Bitcoin, I posted it and I shared the email that I sent to my business group in 2013. Just because I was about to start talking about it, I said, we've been studying it for a while, right? And someone commented that, it's easy to come out an expert. Someone actually used to work with me in it, and so my next article I noted and I try and make it explicit to people now that. I am not a Bitcoin expert.
There's no such thing.
Right. And like anything that I do, if I'm going to go talk to a banking group or something, I don't get paid to do it. I'm doing it because I think it's important for them to look at. And the reality is, and I always, and a big part of the argument is always that, build the capacity to understand it yourself. Don't listen to me, because one of the ironic things about the run-up in price is that it's likely that if you were to interview, a significant sample of everyone who's purchased a digital asset on Coinbase over the past 12 months, that most of them, the primary decision point would be their trust of somebody else who's invested in it and made money. So the trustless system is growing through people trusting in people. right? And so it's ironic, right? But that's human nature, okay? And that's fine. It's okay for people to trust people and follow what they do. But it's always buyer beware. Look at what you're doing, understand the risks in what you're doing, and once you go deep into that, you'll spend less time thinking about how much money to put into it and more time thinking about how to understand it and interact with it.
That's our quip here at Tales from the Crypt. This is a journey, people. You're going to go on a journey of learning. And that's, we've talked about this before too. One of my favorite tweets about Bitcoin from Neil Woodfine is that if Bitcoin becomes successful, it may usher in the next Enlightenment because it forces people to think about things they've never thought about before.
Well, yes. And you can think about that in very, very practical terms. People who go on exchanges and stuff usually, in many cases, are very concerned about hacking and other things. And just by purchasing a little bit of Bitcoin from an exchange like Kraken or Gemini, right? You'll see advisories about how SMS is risky in terms of the porting risk, and how you need to use an authenticator, right? And there are posts that they've put on about basic internet security that should just be standard in the industry, right? Like right now, a regulator should come out and say banks, financial institution exchanges should not be allowed to use SMS as an authentication method due to the porting risk. So come up with your authenticator within 6 to 12 months, right? That should be the standard.
And that's not a big ask either.
No. I mean, they're open. That's why everybody uses Google Authenticator. The people who know how to do it. It's not esoteric, right? But this space is driving people into those better standards.
And for those of you using Google Authenticator, make sure you physically write down the backup to your authenticator. I've had that happen to me before where I lost a phone and lost access to Google Authenticator.
Yeah.
You need the backups. Have the backups.
Right. And if you're paranoid, you split up your authenticators across multiple phones, so you're never completely out.
Only the paranoid survive.
Right. So, but this is something that the the concept of leading to an enlightenment is very interesting to me. I do think that paying attention to digital value forces people to value digital things and technology, and that process should lead to a new innovation, should lead to investing. I mean, so here's a scenario, right? What if somebody has $300 and they decide to buy Bitcoin instead of a pair of Jordans, right? Mm-hmm. And now they're paying attention, watching the Bitcoin space as opposed to watching the shoe space. Is that a plus or a minus for humanity? I don't know, but you can make an argument that that person may learn how to build a computer, that person may decide to learn how to code, that person may decide to learn about monetary policy, right, as opposed to just shoes. So, there are pluses and minuses to everything, and this particular asset class, I look at it, an emerging asset class, it does, I think, force people to get a little bit on their game. And anybody, like most serious people I know about that I've met a lot of serious people now in the past few weeks, right? Mm-hmm. Most of them are very well read. Mm-hmm. Most of them think critically about things. They don't just take the world for granted as it is. Mm-hmm. Most of them think in a long-term view about society. And so whatever your political background or your view about the world, this is something that is leading to an open and interesting discussion that's good.
It's incredible. I mean, and it's invigorating too. Like I'm addicted to it. Like I can't go 30 minutes without checking my crypto Twitter list to see what's going on, because the news is happening so fast. New developments are coming out every day. I mean, yesterday was a huge news day for the space, fundamental-wise. Like Robinhood's coming out with an app, or excuse me, they already have an app. They're about to enable Bitcoin, Ethereum, and I believe 15 other cryptocurrency trading pairs on their app. So it's going to open up a whole nother avenue for new investors. And then you had Coinbase buying a trading firm. You had Strike coming out, which is a Lightning Network Stripe-like API where people can start building on top of the Lightning Network and helping merchants out receive instant, nearly feeless transactions. Then on top of that, you had the mempool clearing out. Like, the fundamentals are lining up right now, and it's funny to see the new wave of people that came in like towards the end of last year with the price rise, who bought between 15 and 19,000. Like, hey, it's boring right now. It's like, no, you need to pay attention to these things that are going on around. Stop, pry your eyes away from the price charts and start looking at the fundamentals.
Right, exactly. And I'm so clearly not an investment advisor, but I tell people when they're looking at this, like, to have a reasonable allocation. And there are academic papers showing that by Professor Liu out of Johns Hopkins. He does a little study and comes to the preliminary conclusion that 1.3% portfolio allocation over time for people who manage money could be a good thing. Could be, not it necessarily is. And the best thing to do is to have an allocation that you can lose and not feel bad about, and then forget about it, and then study about the whole space. Mm-hmm. Because I've said this many times before. I'm not the trading industrial complex has been shoehorned onto Bitcoin, right? In terms of it's basically just taking what people did in Forex and applying it to Bitcoin, which you can make an argument that it's interesting, but it's not necessarily the best use of human brain power. For people who are good at it, go for it, right?
Exactly.
But for most people, you're going to fail. Mm-hmm. So why not just hold on to it and then learn how to invest generally and have financial freedom generally, and then you won't have to be watching charts and prices because you already have a plan and you're following it and you're saving, you're investing, and you're not worried about your financial stability. That's what gives people the freedom to then move actually exponentially in terms of wealth and knowledge by studying and finding a good space. I keep telling people that there are a lot of people who are spending months and weeks reading books to learn trading charts who could just study to become an accountant or a certified financial planner who understands Bitcoin, and then they could make a real career out of it. So
even some of this, I've been going around setting up hardware wallets for people. Just doing that for a small fee, and like something small like that. Just learn how to make people comfortable, because again, it's a whole comfort. This is something that's completely out of most people's comfort zone. So if you're able to make some people that are looking to get into it more comfortable, that's a way to make some money. That's a way to make some Bitcoin.
Right.
You know, and there's so many tangential ways you can get into this.
Absolutely. There are many people who just want someone to explain what the Bitcoins are. That's it. You know, in a very good...
What are the Bitcoins?
What are they? That's all they want to know. And they may not want to buy them, but they just want to know what it is. And frankly, there are a lot of like global leaders, and the person who is paid to explain what Bitcoin is to them is not doing their job. No. They're coming, you know, they come through and they say, okay, they're going to ask you about Bitcoin. What am I going to say? Say something about money laundering, and say something about blockchain. Say that you like blockchain, but you're not sure about Bitcoin. That's okay. Now go. You know, and it's like any serious organization right now, in my view, that is tangentially related to managing, storing, and valuing financial assets or value should be dedicating some staff to understanding this thing. And in fact, that is what's happening for many of them. But to me, there's a global consensus that the concept of quote unquote blockchain is innovative and new and cool, right? But the oldest implementation of that technology is Bitcoin. So if you're going to say that you like that, you know, and you manage a team of economists or investors or whatever, you need to have at least one intern who's really just 100% focused to this space, so you were educated. Yeah. Because it's big and it requires thought and study.
And it's moving fast. It's moving at breakneck speed. And that was one thing. I was sitting in the office in 2000 for the Managed Futures Fund that I worked for, and I was that junior analyst screaming, we should be paying attention to this. We should be paying attention to Bitcoin. We should be buying some. I got laughed out of the office. And it was just like, I went and decided to learn more about UX and UI design and sort of products and how they're built and how code interacts with apps, or how people build apps with code, and understanding front end versus back end technologies. And I wish they would have listened to me, but I'm happy they didn't.
Well, you know, look, one of the things that I say is that I have yet to meet anybody who is really serious about this asset class, who has, you know, at least gone to one conference, who has managed mining equipment or a node, who has, studied and read the top papers on SSRN, which are freely available about this asset class. I've yet to meet anybody who's taken that level of effort, who is bearish on the concept generally. Everybody I know who knows a lot about it likes it and is excited about it. And usually there's a high correlation between ignorance as to what it is and bearishness. So, you know, this is something that has a lot of potential. It's something that, and a lot of people look at as a very scary thing because it could enable money laundering or illegal things. But I always say that, you know, even as not a purely technical person, any smart criminal doesn't put their information in a computer. Right. So, you know, I think that, there's, as I said, there's a paper that I saw today by some Qatari researchers, and they had gone through and analyzed historical transactions on the blockchain and managed to use techniques to actually pinpoint who these people were with publicly identifiable information. Right. Now, this space is all about censorship resistance and other things, but you have to realize that it requires using the internet, which is, you know, this huge gerrymandered public managed thing. And so, I mean, jerry-rigged, you know, it's been like sort of patched together, you know, and it doesn't always work. And even in New York, I walk around, sometimes my phone signal goes out, right? Yeah. So it's not God. It's just technology, right? With a very huge potential implication. But, you know, the point is that a lot of people's perceptions about what it is and the bad things are just, and I see a lot of it's just fear-mongering and ignorance.
Yeah, it was just as stickless this week. It's for money launderers and drug dealers that want to transact anonymously. It's like, if you actually looked into this, Bitcoin's not anonymous at all. No. It's fungibility has been lost at the protocol level.
They're pseudonyms. They're not pseudonyms. You're not anonymous, right? And it's very difficult to be. It's practically, I remember reading an article once just because I was interested, and like someone went through the steps to have a phone that is actually an anonymous phone, right? Because if they want to find you, they're going to cross-reference it to your other phone, your other patterns, right? And I was looking through the steps, and someone was saying that how we'd actually make this work, and they're so ridiculous, right? They're just so like, to actually have a phone like on that you own, that nobody knows it's you, right? You have to take it to places at random times and like take it on little trips and like give it to your friend and say, go to New York while I'm going to Milwaukee. It's like, it's ridiculous. People don't realize how difficult it is. And so when I look at this space, I think that it's going to lead to more awareness and changes in the law. For example, I think that eventually we're going to be forced to move towards higher value-added tax, and people, what they're going to do is tax people at the point of consumption, and they're not going to worry about income tax anymore.
Oh, that's one thing I've been arguing for years is like, why go on an income-based tax system when you can do consumption taxes? Like,
because a lot of accounting firms make a lot of money every year on it.
That's true.
So it's very difficult to get rid of something that's feeding people. We got to find something for them to do that can make them happy.
That's actually the one thing my sister-in-law and I agree on. She works for a city, and she's big banking background, and we've had our spars about Bitcoin and the future of money. Yeah. And the one thing we do agree on is a consumption tax.
Right. I mean, look, and and full disclaimer, my dad he was a partner at Deloitte, so I think part of my education was paid for through like accounting work. So I'm not. I think accountants do great work. Don't come kill me, accountants. But I think that the current implementation of income tax it doesn't really make sense. Not good use of time. And, there are actually very interesting accounting concepts that relate to this space that we're going to need to think through, like the question we talked through about forks. Like there needs to be an accounting standard on what this is and how you value these things. You need to come with new valuation. There are plenty of new exciting things for accountants to do, as opposed to just bean counting every year on, these crazy income tax rules. And it solves at least one part of the problem, which is that if money does actually evolve into something that is completely uncensorable, right? Then yes, that's what you're going to do. You're going to have high consumption taxes, pretty much like probably high real estate taxes and other things, and then that will give the freedom for the space to move without significant loss in government revenue. But the reality is that all of this is good stuff. Changing laws due to advanced technology is a good thing. That means we're moving forward.
Yeah, and I think it's important that we move forward. I would argue that we've hit a bout of stagnation, especially at the political level here in the U.S. I'm completely apathetic towards our government at this point, specifically here in the U.S. There are a bunch of old people that can't get anything done, that are wishy-washy, that it's always, whenever you bring in a new president, if you're coming from a Republican regime going into a Democratic regime, everybody's optimistic at first, and then a year or two in, it's meet the new boss, same as the old boss. It's getting tiring at this point.
I think that probably most young people now are more excited about Bitcoin than politics, and I think that that's okay. I think that actually, let me rephrase that. I think that politics is as boring as the electorate allows it to be. And so now, as people get into these more interesting things, they hopefully will demand of their politicians and use the political process to make the laws and regulations more aligned with their worldview and how they see the world changing. I think that in the United States, if you look at the whole drama with the Russian hacking and so on and so forth, I mean, that is, everybody was like so surprised about it and like, oh, about the terror. Someone's going on Facebook and making fake accounts. I'm like, fake accounts are like probably like the killer app for Facebook and have been for years. I mean, like, you know what I mean? Remember when there was the whole drama about
what did you fucking expect?
Like real names on Facebook? Everybody's like, what, my real name? Now people are going to know, like, nobody wants social media, to not have some degree of not anonymity, but people want to be able to have fun on social media and just talk about funny things, right? And the point should be, like, I think that the strategic reaction to that, I would be like, haha, funny, like, everybody listen, right? Don't get so angry. Don't take everything you see on social media as the truth, right? And And actually, we need to very quickly authorize a bill to increase funding for education, because if our people were well educated, they wouldn't be falling for spoof accounts from Russia.
Exactly.
Yes, so the whole thing was just crazy.
No, that's one of the Tales from the Crypt book club's books that we talk about a lot is The Sovereign Individual. It's a must read if you're into Bitcoin, because it was written in 1997, republished in 1999, and it predicted a lot of what's happening right now, including Bitcoin. It predicted the conditions that would lead to Trump, and it predicted fake news. And relying on fake news was basically, in the future, the ability to discern between what's truthful and what's not is going to be imperative. And that's one thing we're finding out in today's world. Like, you have to be able to critically think for yourself.
Which is good, and I think it will be taught in schools. And I think it probably already is. And I think that opposed to trying to regulate a space that is just really the Wild West, as you said, individuals need, to be educated, to learn, to value what is in front of their face and make a critical decision about it and the veracity of it. And that is the direction in which the world is moving. As things get decentralized, there are many people, even for now, who get most of their news through a friend, through social media. So that's, decentralized trust in authority of news is now moving to individuals through social media, right? And so it's incumbent upon individuals to actually be able to discern what's coming from them. And we're not just going to rely on some big media organization to say this is the arbiter of the truth.
No, and it's funny to see how the different generations consume media and information differently. Like my father-in-law, love him, but he sits there and watches MSNBC all day, and that's his news source, and that's the only thing. And I'm sitting there with my tweet deck up. I've got my crypto, finance, journalism, media, geopolitical sort of list that I'm reading and getting information from people that I've vetted over years and years. And how could you not consume information this way? How could you let MSNBC just
when you mentioned that, I laughed internally because you sound like my mom. My mom gets her information from social media. So she'll send me a link and I'm like, who sent you this on Facebook or on WhatsApp? It's
Facebook and WhatsApp are different than Twitter.
I know, and I agreed. Twitter in particular, before all of this, I actually had deleted all my tweets, obscured my name and picture, and maybe had 200 followers because I wasn't using it anymore. I just was like, I'm not using this thing. Twitter, but at the time, I would use Twitter like I would use in the years past. I've been on Twitter since 2008, so in the years past, I would. I use it for friends, and I have friends who are, I remember when Twitter was really cool, right? And I had friends who were in media here in New York, and they were always on Twitter, 2007, 2008, 2009. And then I thought that it lost a bit of cool factor for a while, right?
Lost its luster.
It did, and then but basically, what I had not noticed because I wasn't paying attention was that very intelligent people were using Twitter just as a sort of sounding board for their thoughts and ideas, right? And even in my personal experience with it, after I posted the article, which I didn't intend to get a lot of information, there were a few people who had retweeted a few things that I had said, and then my phone was going so crazy I had to turn it off. And then I, one night, I think it was near New Year's, I just said, I'm just going to start saying the things that I think that I usually would say to I have a WhatsApp group with my family, and that's where I send out most of my crazy things, and then every so often one of them will say, Chiefy, stop spamming us with these these crazy ideas of yours, right? And then Twitter is actually the best place for crazy ideas. You just go out there and you think about.
There's a bunch of kooks who will grab onto them.
Right.
Let's appease this idea.
Yeah, and it's great. It's it will turn you into a radical in a very short period of time because you're like, wait a minute, other people think this too? Wow, it's crazy.
That's the beauty of it. It when you meet like-minded people on the internet, specifically on Twitter, because it's so immediate. It's invigorating. It's all right, I'm not crazy.
Right. No, it's actually, and that's actually probably the most frightening thing about this entire experience has been that factor, because
Frightening.
I say frightening because it would be one thing if you put out a lot of crazy ideas, right? And then you met with a bunch of the people who were behind them, and they were all like complete psychos, they're just completely gone, and just, they're, degenerate people. But I'm meeting people with very good jobs, very smart, very accomplished people are the ones thinking this way. And that part scares me a little bit, because it feels like, we've gotten to a point in society where so many people are not really concerned with complex ideas that people are starving to meet other people who think about complex ideas, because it's become a
bit taboo to not just fall into the lifestyle conspicuous consumption and celebrity and the TMZ type media and gossip and stuff like that.
Yep. I come to find that a lot of the people that I meet in this space, even people who've been for a long time, who I can predict probably have a pretty high net worth, most of these people that I meet and talk to are very normal, very down to earth. They're not flashy. They're just normal people who are interested in very nerdy things. And that, I think, is very good. I think that, and with Twitter in particular, Facebook has become something. I've been off it for about a year as well, and then I went back on recently and I looked at the things that were on there and I was just like, turn this off, right? It's and I think that a lot of the problems that they've been encountering in terms of having to reorient what they're doing and how they're doing it are a reflection of that. People have become so sucked into these tools, and their dopamine receptors are being, primed to look for certain types of content and to interact with certain types of content. And I find the concept of decentralization, I think that it works perfectly for the next stage of new technologies. I think that, your AI assistant should not, by law, belong to a large company.
No.
I think that in the future, even though the cloud is so important, in the future people will produce boxes you can put in your house that will run your AI assistant and everything else, so that the computerized copy of your brain is yours and is protected and is private.
And Google's not selling that information to advertisers.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think it's, because that is advertising on steroids. That's not fair. I think that people should have, AI assistants are good, and I think AI technology is good. But I think that, machine learning or things that are really running complex operations on your behavior that you can't understand should really be yours. They should belong to you.
They should, and that's another recurring conversation we have on this podcast is owning your own data. And that's one thing a lot of people don't realize right now, is that they're products. They're products of Facebook, Twitter, Google. They're following you around the internet, and they're selling your data to advertisers.
Yeah,
and
I think so.
Sorry to interrupt, but that's why Bitcoin's so beautiful, and the concept behind Bitcoin's so beautiful is because it's a push system where you're pushing data when you want to reveal it, and it's not getting pulled from you automatically.
Yes. I think that's a very good point. And I played around with Toshi. I don't know if you. It crashes a lot.
What Brian Armstrong was building when he should have been implementing SegWit.
Hey, leave me out of that, man.
I'm kidding. I'm not gonna tell Coinbase how to run their business.
You can. It's a free world, right? But and I do have opinions on Coinbase, right? That. And I guess I'll talk about maybe in a few seconds. But the point I was thinking about was I find it interesting to do the ad bot on Toshi, right? Because I think that, that concept, right? Just that concept does drop some millions out of Facebook's market cap, right? Once you can successfully implement a sustainable ad bot, right? And like I was using Toshi for a while, and with the ad bot, I was like, free ETH every day. And then every so often they'd be like, there wasn't enough funds in the ads. He didn't get yours. And then I was like, put this thing away. I didn't get my free either today. Right? So I was playing around with it. I put it away. But like, and when it comes to that concept of owning your own data, you know, I remember the Diaspora Project, right? And it was really interesting. And I thought, oh, this is really good. And, you know, and it was actually really ahead of its time. Because, you know, the whole concept of decentralized social network, right? And
let's talk about Diaspora a little bit. What is it? Can you explain it for people who don't know?
Generally, it's decentralized Facebook that occurred many years ago. I can't remember how many years it even started. It was maybe 3 or 4. It occurred well before the crypto kitties and ICO craze, right? And the whole concept was this whole concept of, you know, own your own data. You can basically run kind of something like a node where you have your friends and your interaction on the Diaspora network, right? Yeah. And when I thought about that, like, and I think about it, I'm like, so that's a company that actually I would like to see an ICO from, or something of, not like in the typical fashion, but that's an idea, an implementation that, you know, should be receiving funding and should be growing, because the concept of like owning your data, and especially when it comes to social media, if you say a lot of interesting things on social media and there's a lot of revenue being generated from those things, you should be automatically compensated for that content, because you're a content producer, right? And especially when people are getting, you know, they're spending so much time on these things, that, you know, give them some of the value. So I think that, you know, especially with decentralized communication, you know, I'm very into technologies that would help enable people to create their own versions of, you know, walled social media applications using open protocols like Signal Protocol and other things, right? That, you know, so that you can have some confidentiality and, you know, say what you want to say, because that actually leads to more productive and good ideas.
Yeah, no, I think Blockstack's definitely one of the projects working on that. And I respect Ryan and Manib, the two co-founders of Blockstack, very much. I've been to a few of their meetups throughout the years here in New York, and I think they have a really good grasp on this concept of owning your own data, and are building out an incredible platform with Blockstack. And then beyond that, it's like there's not too many projects I'm excited about in that regard. But it's something people are beginning to think about, and that's something we didn't think about, like, as the internet grew into what it is today. And it was just, people were like, oh my god, it's so easy to sign up for Facebook and start sharing stuff. They never even thought about that they were products. And now people are waking up to it. We're iterating on these things, and we're realizing that maybe the way we structure the internet and the companies built on it are at our throughout our first go isn't the best way. And now it's okay. We recognize that users being products probably isn't the best thing, and let's start building out these new systems where you can give control back to the consumer.
It is very interesting, and we spent a lot of time talking about things other than Bitcoin in terms of ICOs and stuff, and then I feel a little bit of responsibility. I do get asked questions about these projects and other things, and as someone who has vetted projects as a lawyer, you know, for money, you know, for a job, and then also in terms of our own fundraising and funding of other companies, the one thing I say about these things is look at the use of funds page. That's the only thing you need to read. Look and see, where is the funds being raised going to go? And personally, I have, you know, if I were to go to an investor that invests in one of our companies and say, I'm running this new project and I want half of the money for the project and the other half I want to have a party with it, they would basically run me out of the room. So, and so I'm not really, so a lot of times I sound like a Bitcoin max.
It's not always a party line. It's usually marketing. They're going to disguise that party with marketing.
Right, but if your idea is so good, you don't need to market it, right? There's the internet. Like, you know, like things can grow. You know, I put up some stupid Facebook post talking about space and spaceships, and people like, you know, and you know, and it's moving, right? So if your idea is really super good, you don't need to put, like, literally, you know, I had a group of people in DC, right? I wanted to meet with people talk about this stuff because I was so excited. I put like $100 behind a Twitter post, right? I boosted Twitter with $100, and like 30 people showed up. So I mean, and now people think, oh, maybe this is a small amount. No, the people that showed up were serious people, right? So you don't need that much to market a really good idea or something that really people are really excited about, right? I mean, if you're trying to change a paradigm, maybe you got to put a lot of money behind it. And if you're running an ICO, don't send me hate mail. I think you're doing a fantastic job. But right now, the reason why I'm sitting here talking is because I wrote a article particularly about Bitcoin and a sort of economic, social, political rationale for going into it. And that's the only digital asset that I can make that in good faith argument for now. I think that everything else shows fantastic promise. And if you're into venture capital type activities, go for it. But for me, I see myself as a value investor with everything that I decide to spend time on. And even though I'm not getting a return for the time I spend on Bitcoin in terms of money, I'm getting an exponential return in terms of knowledge. So I spend my time on it for that, and I talk about it for that because I think other people, need to pay attention. And, now we have, I always tell people, recently Dropbox is going to IPO. I was using Dropbox since Dropbox was available to be used, right? The moment I saw it, I was like, whoa, this is great, And it has advantages still to this day. You use Google Drive and everything moves up and down over the internet. It uses your local network to optimize, data moving amongst computers and other things. It's a very great product, right? But, I never had an opportunity to get any value aside from being a customer. And now some people somewhere are going to make a lot of money off of something that I've been really happy and excited about for many, many years. This space is one where you can get, you'll
get rewarded for
your excitement and enthusiasm without having to ask Mr. Moneybags, right? Which is good.
No, which is incredible. Like the open source nature of these protocols and these projects, just allowing the retail investor to participate is something that people are just getting acquainted to and are addicted to.
Right. That's also very interesting because I think that one of the things I'm hoping to see in 2018 in this space is the rise of more registered investment advisors who understand this, who don't just, throw it off. I remember I was talking to somebody, and I was talking to a company I worked with, and I was saying, hey, you need to spend more time on this space, and particularly Bitcoin. And they were like, well, we got these other projects. And I was like, do you know that, for a period of time, this was the number one app on the App Store? You don't ignore something that is moving with this kind of aggressive velocity. You don't. And you figure out a way to engage with it. And I think that it's incumbent upon entrepreneurs who have professions, lawyers, accountants, people who financial advisors. They need to start understanding this more because their clients, not just because their clients want it, because this could very well be the future of money and all that. And it's a fantastic opportunity that could bring a lot of professionalism into the space and also prevent the biggest thing, which is people getting scammed, right? Like lots of people. And the biggest worry one of the biggest worries I have, and one of the reasons why, once again, I said that central banks in developing countries should look at this, is because if you advise individuals to get into the space, what happens is BitConnect. What happens is, the price of Litecoin goes from $30 to $400 overnight. If you don't give people advice before they get involved in this space, right? You have all of these irrational, so unit bias. I remember, I can't remember, but I think a founder of a company asked me what unit bias was.
Oh my god!
And I was like, "Your company is never getting any money." Yeah, and the thing is that
that's what we talked about. Like I had somebody in this office ask me or tell me, what if I'm gonna buy Ripple? It's so cheap. It could go to
Ripple is unit bias coin.
It could go to $1,200. I'm like, do you realize how big that market cap would be if Ripple went to $1,200? It'd be like $120 trillion market cap.
Yeah, I would go into my real thoughts on Ripple, but I think this is being recorded, so I'll save that for afterwards. But Ripple things, all this space, right? Like I can't, you never know what's going to happen with any of these technologies, right? So it's and so I don't want to be that Luddite or that anti-innovation person, right?
No, that's always the line I'm towing as well too. Is
Right.
because I trend towards maximalism, and I call a lot of bullshit on a lot of these projects.
Right, right. And I remember it like I remember it the first time this actually happened, right? You know, there's do I talk about this or not? Big controversy over James Altucher,
Oh yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah,
Everybody hates him, right? I've met him before, right? I met the guy, and he was perfectly nice to me, right?
Mhm.
And he had, look, and so I see there are two sides to every story. If you bought Bitcoin when he first started talking about it, you'd be happy.
Mm-hmm.
But people don't also like the concept of like crypto genius on AdWords, right? People hate it, right?
Yeah.
And so but like then I remember thinking to somebody, I was saying like, okay, well, if your mom was going to get into Bitcoin, like you want James Altucher to talk to you about it. I don't know. So it's sort of it's like one of these things where, and people are rabidly angry about, quote unquote charlatans and frauds. The way I see it, if once you get into space, you have to have an open mind.
Mm-hmm.
And what I would suggest is people should listen to everybody and then just pick the best things for themselves. And then and me purposely, the reason why I gave the ICO disclaimer in this talk is because usually I try and avoid even talking about them because it's the same. It's like crack cocaine. The moment you take a significant amount of money and you pick one of these tokens or whatever, and you get a 5 or 10x return, eyes red, you're on the computer, and it's just like, give me more, right? Give me more 10x, right? And it's like, and that is not good for human beings. We don't know how to process things like that. So as I keep repeating, at a certain point, after being involved in this for a while, I told people close to me that, hey, if you have any of these things that you believe in, put them in cold storage and forget about them. Mm-hmm. You're not a trader. Mm-hmm. You can't predict the future, and nobody else can predict the future. You're taking risk. So if you're going to be taking risk, do it in a responsible way. And I think the best way to take risk on Bitcoin is to learn about it. And I can vouch, at least for this one, that more so than anything else, there are other digital assets that I tried to engage people about as early as 2013, 2014. And the people involved in these projects, every so often I say negative things about these projects on Twitter. The people involved in these projects, they were not nice. They did not help. They did not, appreciate an earnest desire to learn. But for other ones, and Bitcoin in particular, if you go to even a place full of like really aggressive, in my view so far, most people, if you earnestly say, I want to learn about it, and what do I do? They will help you get the information. Mm-hmm. And that's different from a lot of different things.
Then what should I buy? What should I buy?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah.
That's the one thing I stress, and this is what Bitcoin enables, is everybody to be a sovereign individual. This is a very personal decision for everybody. Like your money, the hard-earned money that you are putting into these tokens, it's very like you worked hard for that money. You should make a very educated decision when investing, and I do not want to be responsible for hand-holding you towards these investments. Like, this is a personal decision. This is something that you have to do a lot of research in and really get to know yourself before you get into this.
Well, right. And I think that really people who invest, like if you're buying these things with an investor's mindset, in order to say that you're investing, you need to know what investing is and how to do it. And most people don't know how to invest. That's why we have regulated the industry. So I do, it is important for people to learn the general concepts. And there are a lot of people out there with decent perspectives on that. But, the level of, in the United States, the level of materialism and waste that has occurred over the past 10, 15 years has been remarkable. And, we have entire industries that are based on fluff, nothing. I saw a chart today about the FANG stocks and the value. And so in that kind of world, there is a need for a real serious discussion about value, about investing, about savings and fairness, because the underpinnings of the system are made by human beings who make decisions that decide what our interest rates are, decide how expensive it is to go to school, how expensive it is to eat, and so on and so forth. And and there does need to be a serious discussion. A lot of the stuff that I talk about, and one of the reasons why I am excited about this is, when I was in 2003 or so, I spent some time when I was in law school writing about my thoughts on capitalism and other things.
Yeah, I did some research. You wrote your college thesis on land tenure.
Yes.
You were talking about the mystery of capital.
Yes, Hernando de Soto is a very interesting book. And and that also, that book, when you read it, lets you understand the abstract nature of value. Because a big part of the argument is that if you don't have a good legal system and a good land tenure system, right?
So that's like I was telling you about Za from Zimbabwe earlier. One of the problems he brought up that he hopes Bitcoin can solve or in the future is his grandmother owned a farm in Zimbabwe and rented it out for a decade or so, and then eventually wanted to go sell it and went to the farm to get her title, and then found out the person she was renting it to had switched out the title in his name without her knowing and sold the farm separately without her being involved at all.
So I've looked at this issue a little bit carefully, and I am a lawyer who has a family investment group that invests in banks and financial institutions. So we have to look look into land as collateral and other things and the potentials of it. And I think that blockchain technology, like aside from the transmission of value, public registries of all kinds, where there's a good degree of immutability, right? Even though you need to have trusted entry points into the immutable network, because you don't want to have corrupted entry points into an immutable network. So now, you have immutable fraud, right? And things of the sort, right? But the thing is that for many of them, it's actually very challenging for me because, like, okay, take land. As disclaimer, there are some products that I've found interesting in the past that work on the land title industry that I have invested in other things, but when I think about it critically, right, it's just that those things are a speculative bet for me, because I always say, okay, in all these countries, we could start with an SQL database, permissioned SQL database, and Google Maps API.
All right, and just pin.
No, you just create, with Maps API, right? You can actually create shapes, so you could just use Google Maps API. And you could use an SQL database, take the land registry, clean the data, and then just put it out in the public. So you could go to a map, and any coordinate, you could click on it, and it would say it belongs to A, B, or C.
Oh, damn. And
it could take 5 minutes to solve this problem with currently available open
technology. Is anybody working on it like this?
Well, I mean, I use. At first, it was called, I can't remember. They discontinued the product. But they had like a version of Google Maps that allowed you to, it wasn't Google Earth, but it allowed you to like create a lot of shapes and manipulate things. And I would use it if I was doing, research on land, and real estate investments and other things, or real estate holdings. I'd create a map and I'd put all of them on the map, right? And it's, it's very easy. Using Google Fusion Tables could do it for a while, but you can so for example, if I'm analyzing, I recently used it to, we're in banking, right? So I do analysis on the collateral, and you can make a layer, and you can just see all of the collateral, and I reference crime statistics and other things, and it's easy. And like it's Google My Maps is what it was, or whatever, and it's super easy to do. You just take a data table, you throw it in there with the GPS coordinates, and you can create tons of layers and see lots of things, right? And that's even more ridiculous, because you could basically do this not even with an SQL database. You could do this with an Excel sheet and the GPS coordinates of the various properties. So the reality is that the reason why that problem with land tenure exists is because people in positions of authority don't want it to work, and you can actually see that in the United States.
Why not?
Because they make money from selling fake titles. And the other thing is, and similarly, do an experiment in the United States. This would be an interesting experiment. If you go in the United States and you rank states by perceived level of corruption, and then cross-reference that table to the ease of searching the land title registry online for that state, and you'll find some interesting things.
I'm going to look up Illinois when I get home.
Hey, don't say I have business in Chicago. Someone's gonna murder me. Illinois is great.
No, I got good connections in Chicago.
You do? Okay, but there's no
in
corruption in Chicago. What are you talking about?
Yeah,
I love Chicago.
That's the one thing people don't realize. They call it the Windy City, not because of the wind, but because of the politics.
Oh, the politics are fantastic. All the politicians in Chicago are my friends, and I love them. But I mean, but the thing is that seriously though, this whole thing. But I mean, when you look at these things, right? If you lived in New York, I lived in New York for 9 years. It's the longest time I've ever spent in one place is in New York.
Really?
Yeah. And so, any time you live in New York, you pay attention to real estate, right? Took some real estate development classes, and so I got into all the new emerging websites like Property Shark and other things at the time, or in the early, aughts, whatever, right? You look and and it was so exciting to me. I was like, whoa, I could pay these people money, and I can see who owns any property in the city. I was like, what? And so, I would just go and look at properties and just see, okay, who owns this one? Who owns that one? Oh, look, and it's interesting, right? But you had to pay for it. But it's, this concept has been doable for so long. It's just that, people, people have. It's the public that needs to demand it to happen.
Yeah, the incumbents don't want to give up the authority to register.
No, right. I mean, but even not because so in this use case, right? I think that the immutability is the big thing.
That's the number one innovation is the censorship resistance, the immutability.
Right. So so once you buy it, and it's yours. But I do think that the authority to approve, it's gonna be held within human beings.
Yeah,
because
the Oracle problem.
Yes, there's gonna need some people that we pick that we think are good people.
Yeah. That
say that, okay, this is a valid transaction. Now it goes on the immutable ledger, and with a problem, but with something like land, I think that with Bitcoin and with value, right, it's more important than it is because transactions in land don't have the same velocity of transactions in volume, right? And also the reality, it's always, I find it always so funny, like with all the fee debate people and all the stuff, and the reality is that most people who are the most interested people in Bitcoin don't want to sell it, so they don't give a hoot about what transaction fees? Never transacting. I'm like, these are people who would not sell their Bitcoin until you can buy immortality with Bitcoin. Like they will just never sell it, right?
Most hodlers I know, they plan on just using it as collateral and handing it down to their grandchildren.
Now, and this is one of the things. I'm glad you brought that up because I talk about this a lot, and I'm very excited about it because I think that it is very good collateral.
Yes,
it is, because any asset, once human consciousness goes away, the value of any asset goes to zero, right? If everybody dies, all financial assets value is zero because it has to exist in our brains. We have to think we like it, right? So if everybody decides that this thing that's immutable and permissionless has value, you create a much more vibrant financial system where you can leverage this asset for interesting things. And also you can reduce the cost of banking relative to this asset, right? And there are already banks that specialize in lending against relatively intangible or hard to value assets. There are banks that will lend you money against art. There are banks that will lend you money against stock portfolios and other things, and then they focus on that, right? And I think that eventually there will be banks that focus on lending money against Bitcoin because there are people who don't want to sell it, and so imagine how many more companies those people would be starting and how many more people they'd be employing if they could get loans against these huge holdings of Bitcoin that they have. It'd be good for the economy. So if anybody at regulatory agency in banking is listening to me, please issue a statement.
Please listen to Chiefy.
And just say that, okay, treat them as unsecured loans to start.
This is my long-term view. I plan on using my Bitcoin as collateral one day to start businesses. Like you were just describing. I never want to touch it. I just want to be able to. I'll sign my key. Say, hey, I prove that I own this Bitcoin. I'm going to take out a loan against it. If I'm not good on the loan, yes, you can get some Bitcoin eventually, but I think I'm going to start a good business and be able to pay back the loan that you give.
And it's interesting. For this particular concept, one of the reasons why I'm excited about it is that particularly in developing countries, let's say you're in a country with no good operating land title registry, the Zimbabwe problem, right? And you want to store value, most people, the first thing there's a paper by these two Yale professors. I keep forgetting their names, but basically it's called Mortgage Your Future Theory, right? Where they talk about how you can make an argument that it's irrational that people are allowed to borrow so much money for land, right, and over allocate to it, and that they should actually early on in their life borrow money to invest in stocks, because every year in the stock market is a separate and distinct asset, and your probability of doing well is higher the more years you're exposed. So their argument is, you should responsibly borrow, and they've run some numbers that show that it can work out better than other asset classes. So I think that people need to think carefully, and we need to readjust banking systems to not be so focused on real property and other things, and think about other more interesting assets. Like encouraging people to be able to, once they have proven that they have a good advisor and they know about financial management, they can borrow certain amounts of money to invest in earning assets other than real estate, right? Because now, like anybody, you don't have to pass any tests to buy a house. Once you have the down payment and the credit score, here you go. You may not even know how to plunge a toilet, and you can buy a house, right? So, but if you wanted to borrow a lot of money to buy stocks, they'd be like, "Oh my God, what are you doing? Do you know what you're doing?" Right? And so it's a but they're both
sort of
assets.
Double standard there.
Well, not just something, but they're both assets where you can't reliably predict the future price, or else you wouldn't have had a financial crisis based on the housing market collapsing, right? So really, there's more interesting ideas in terms of lending should be allowed. But I wanted to bring up one point, and I'm not shilling for open dime, but I think in this concept, it's a very easy, and even in a developing country.
We endorse shilling for open dime here.
Okay, good. So it's a easy, cheap solution, whereby even in a country with very low infrastructure, as long as you can maintain a bank vault, you could take custodianship of Bitcoin, right? And you could lend against it. And so basically, banks everywhere are regulated. So not only is your auditor going to come in and look what's going on, but the regulator is going to come and look what's going on. And if you steal someone's Bitcoin out of the vault, you're going to jail, right? Which is a good system. So someone can safely keep an open dime in a bank vault, right? And then borrow against the value as the price goes up or down or whatever.
And have it insured on the back end as well.
Boom. There you go. Yeah. And this doesn't require trying to create a multi-sig wallet like Parity that's going to get hacked, right? It doesn't require anything. It just take an open dime, put the Bitcoin on, and go to sleep, right? Yeah. And then just audit it, check it, and you can create an alert on the public address.
Create a movement alert.
Yes, exactly, and then you're done. So this model is actually something I'm very excited about, and when I do talk to people who have authority to talk about it, I bring up this concept because I think that it'll bring a lot of transparency into finance, and it's an area of finance that's difficult to game, right? And that's actually, it's subject to movements in price, but the reality is that the value of an asset you can leverage is higher than the value of an asset that you can't leverage. So its existence will help to bring in some price stability. It'll help bring in an equilibrium in price because it's going to take stock that would otherwise be sold off the market, and so you will get to equilibrium faster.
Yeah.
When this happens.
Yeah.
And the price depends on your unit of account bias. If your unit of account is 1 Bitcoin equals 1 Bitcoin, then you have nothing to worry about.
Ding ding ding. Yes. yes. That's very good. I mean, this is an exciting area of finance. It's new, and and I think that everybody's thinking about it. Everybody is thinking about how they can do that. And I think that, this whole blockchain not Bitcoin thing came up through to a lot of the problems that Bitcoin has had over time. A lot of those things have gone. And I think that there are a number of things that are going on that are wrong.
Let's talk about them. What's going on?
Let's talk about Bitcoin Cash.
Let's get into it.
So, the whole ETF thing, I really got into that because of what I saw with Bitcoin Cash. And just from being like a guy who doesn't really know that much, and just having CryptoWatch open and the screen, my workstation is crazy. I have many, many screens, and I keep CryptoWatch open, not because I'm necessarily trading, but I just like to watch the market, just as I keep Bloomberg on 24/7. I put that there because I want to see what's happening, right? See if anything crazy goes on, right? And I would see these weird moves in Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, especially on weekends and holidays, like Thanksgiving weekend and other things. And I'm like, looks like someone's manipulating the prices. And then and this is just a hunch. I have no information. I can't accuse anybody of doing anything. I wouldn't. But I looked at it and it seemed curious that this would happen repeatedly late last year. And everybody everybody's been writing about.
It wasn't even only the price. It was like the hash rate too. They're fluctuating hash rate between chains as well. I mean, it was a pretty overt manipulation.
That's a little over my pay grade. No, I'm just playing. I'm joking. But the reality is that. But I mean, but I'm saying that you don't even need to go that deep to see that something curious is happening. And then, the launch on Coinbase. I thought that Coinbase. Most people introduce people to this space through Coinbase because it's easy and fast, and
Great
they have
UX.
done
Great UX.
And and I think that
it's working.
So the only devil's advocate argument I would make against everybody who's so angry about them not implementing SegWit and everything else, right, is that they have spent a lot of time and money on their fiat rails, more so than other companies. So there are more rails and faster in some cases. Not all, not for wires, but they spend a lot. It seems like they spend a lot of time on ACH and credit card rails, more so than anybody else. And that's actually why I find Coinbase to be actually one of the biggest threats to banks, because they have a team in there that understands how to manage the most commonly used fiat rails, which are credit cards and ACH, right? And I think they focused on that because they just want to be the McDonald's, right? They want to be the place where if somebody just makes that decision that it's $500, they grab their credit card or they grab their whatever and they go in, right? It'd be interesting to see statistics on what the volume of purchases via credit cards would be, right, through Coinbase. But, I think that they should be commended for that in terms of bringing people into the space, right? And now I'm going to take them to the woodshed. But in terms of that Bitcoin Cash launch, right, they kind of half apologized, but they need to apologize for that nonsense.
It was asinine. If you're going to be the McDonald's of the industry, give somebody a fucking warning. Just don't drop it on the public.
So the reality, and I think I may get this wrong, but when I was watching it, I think that this occurred in between the launch of futures on the CME and the CBOE. And in each case, right, these exchanges told everybody, we're doing it on Sunday. Why are they doing it on Sunday? Because they want low volume and they want to work out any kinks, right? And they let everybody know exactly when it was going to happen, months or weeks in advance. So you cannot feign ignorance to the responsible way to launch a new asset on a platform. And my wish and hope is that they actually remove it from there. And the reason why is that it's a fork of Bitcoin. They should not have a policy. And so actually, I don't want to get hate mail. I'm joking, but not really. I personally think that there should...
Chiefy, I will step in where you're afraid to go.
You can say it.
Brian Armstrong and Coinbase have been, I don't want to say enemies of Bitcoin, but they've been actively trying to change Bitcoin for years. Starting with Bitcoin Classic, moving to Bitcoin XT, moving to Bitcoin Unlimited, moving to the New York agreement, and then when the New York agreement didn't work out and SegWit 2X didn't work out, they decided, hey, fuck it, we're going to fuck with Bitcoin by adding Bitcoin Cash out of nowhere to try to disrupt the network. For some reason, I don't know why. I don't know what the reason is. I don't know if Bitcoin in its current state is not as profitable as Coinbase would like it to be for them. I don't know what the case may be. But for some reason, Brian Armstrong and his team have been trying to change Bitcoin for years. And they've done it unsuccessfully. And I think this Bitcoin Cash edition might have been out of spite. I'm not going to put any words in your mouth. I'm not going to say this is how you think. This is my thought.
Thanks. I appreciate that. So what I'll say is that, look, there's a responsible way to introduce an asset on any trading platform. And the responsible way is not by surprise or on or even if you have a blog post early in the day. Anybody knows this. So I think they need to apologize for doing that. I think that was very bad for this. That is one of the things that actually soured me on this space and a key reason why I decided to write publicly, because I felt that things were going on that people need to know about, and there needs to be a more responsible way. I think that the only thing that I could speculate is I think there are some people who mistakenly believe that these things can practically become a currency within short periods of time, and they're using various reasons to try and make it a more widely acceptable medium of exchange, right? But until you create a digital asset that has a team of people like a central bank or Fed, who are managing the supply and keeping it at parity with other currencies for other strategic reasons, having it as a widely accepted medium exchange is going to be very difficult because people don't want to have to pay 5 Bitcoins for the Lambo today and 10 for it tomorrow. It doesn't work in a market, and your accountants are going to be working like 17 million hours trying to get your books in order. It doesn't work.
It has to go through the continuum. Like, it has to establish itself as a collectible and a store of value, and then eventually become to a medium of exchange when the market's saturated enough that people exchanging Bitcoin doesn't.
So you can make a perfectly reasonable argument that once, let's say, Bitcoin hits the market cap of gold and you're at a price of $300,000, $400,000, and then on an annualized basis going from there, the price appreciates in line with global inflation, right? Then I could see the Lightning Network and Bitcoin actually having some of the major characteristics of a currency, because you'd have relative stability throughout the course of the year, growing to 1% to 3% on an annual basis in terms of price appreciation to a basket of fiat currencies, right? That's a scenario where I can see the Lightning Network really being like, okay, now we have global money, right? But then I get back to Max Weber, right? All currencies really are backed by a state with monopoly legitimate alliance. Where's the Bitcoin army, right? Where are the people with the guns who are going to defend this network when things go down, right? The U.S. has it, China has it, Ghana even. We have a military. Everybody has a military, right? To protect those interests, and this network does not have that characteristic. So I don't really see it as a currency. I really believe in the Gold 2.0 thesis, and I think that eventually, with technologies that we may not be able to perceive or anticipate now, it can become even many more things in the future.
Yeah. And again, it's establishing itself. It's going to take time. Have some patience, people. That's another theme on this podcast is trying to help people realize that they need to be patient when these technologies are building themselves out. You're not going to get everything out of the box overnight.
And I think everybody has experiences, if you start investing, and like I'm not a professional in it, but I play around with investing. So I first got into this. I would play around, and I remember one time I was using the exchange and I shorted Bitcoin. Didn't work very well.
Sorry for your loss.
No, I did not make a loss. I recover from my losses. I do not yet end the year down. It doesn't happen. So basically, but the point is that I was playing around with it. I was just experimenting, right? I was like, how does this thing work? And actually, people don't like. I am a banking nerd, right? And I'm a finance nerd. So like, I will go and open bank accounts and time how long it takes. Yeah, like so, and multiple ones. Nerdy. Yeah, I do it, and I'm like, I'm smiling the whole time because the person doesn't know I'm timing them. I'm like, I'm gonna put this in a spreadsheet, and then so I test out financial products. Like if something's interesting to me, I'll open up the exchange accounts and just see how it works, right? And like I learned a lot of things about, and I do it as, figuring out the future of what's happening. Because if you're in this financial services business, you need to know what people are doing in order to know where you need to go, and you need to try out the products. So, and you try out mobile money products, you try out trading products. And so, I played around with it. And after that, I said, that's a very dangerous tool to play around with this particular asset. And so, and everybody has their, their experiences where they realize that, yes, the best thing to do is probably to see it as a store of value. And then I see it as a store of value / emergency expenses / major expenses, right? If you need to make a big purchase fast, that's a very good use case. And I can see that as a use case for many different types. Let's say you have a consortium of companies that are involved in a JV or something, right? And it's in a risky business, right? That needs liquidity fast. There's a really good use case for multi-sig wallets in Bitcoin, so that, okay, we know that things could go down any minute, right? Or, we're trading, algorithmic trading thing in very risky leveraged bets. So we need to make sure we can meet margin calls immediately, right? they're really good uses for this type of asset for sophisticated investors, and there are also really good uses of it for, based on the sound money concepts and other things, right? For the ordinary person with a responsible allocation. So it's a really interesting thing.
Yeah, it can really help out with the clearing side of our financial system.
Mm-hmm.
But with all that being said, we just blew through 2 hours there.
Really? That was 2 hours?
Almost. I think we're at like 155. Can't be much longer than that.
Wow. Wow. I think that there's a side effect of Bitcoin is loquaciousness. Like, it just, it makes you loquacious.
You can go on for hours, and we're about to go to dinner and discuss it for
Oh, great.
more.
I hope there's more whiskey.
There will be. We're going to a steakhouse down the street. Chiefy, where can we learn more about you?
You can Google me and you'll find strange things. But, really look for me on Twitter. My Twitter handle, I guess it's Chiefy Nduom, my last name, Nduom. And every so often you'll find inflammatory tweets that disappear. Because I don't believe in leaving an indelible record of my thoughts on the internet.
Chiefy's trying to turn Twitter into Snapchat. He would love a Twitter Snapchat.
I want disappearing Twitter messages. I want it. If that happened, I would buy stock in Twitter.
Not advised right now, though.
Not at all. None of this is investment advice. There's a bunch of crazy people talking on radio. Yeah, there it is.
On the internet.
Yeah. The internet. Internet radio. I'm an old person.
You're not old. You can find me at Marty Bent on Twitter. Subscribe to my newsletter, link in my bio, and subscribe to the podcast if you like it. Share it with your family and friends that are curious about Bitcoin. And I guess that's all we have this week, freaks. Peace and love.
Woo! That was good. That was fun.
That's what I love this show.
Yeah.
I like the